Welcome everybody to the 22nd Health Teaching Workshop of the Keshe Foundation. The topic for this workshop will be the olfactory system, the barcode reader. And today, as usual, we will be speaking with Mr. Keshe of the Keshe Foundation. And first we'll hear from Dr. E.Kostova of the Spaceship Institute. And she will describe the olfactory system for us, the anatomy of the olfactory system, commonly known as the nose, but it includes more than the nose, I suspect. And then we'll have comments from Mr. Keshe after that. So I think we're ready to begin. Dr. Kostova, are you there?
Yeah, hello everybody. It's me, Elia, and nice to be with you and the 22nd Keshe Foundation Health Teaching Workshop. The subject today is olfactory system and the nose. So we go with the first slide. The first slide is a representation of embryology. In the part of embryo where start the formation of nose, this is the part of encephalon, how you see in the middle picture. The nose forms in duration of our development in embryo state during different weeks, because actually the nose have different parts and contain different tissue. Some part of the nose is represented from bones, cartilage, muscles, and also the mucosa, and a huge amount of the nose is represented from the nervous system. And how you see the formation of the nose in the middle picture is in the number 1. This is the beginning of the first central nervous system nerve, and this is the olfactory nerve. That is the part where starts to form the olfactory bulb. Actually, our nose represents the olfactory system, what starts with formation of olfactory bulb from encephalon. And the number 2, this is the eyes area, and how you see they start for so close place, the eyes, the ears, and the nose. In the middle of the head of the embryo, if you remember, this is the part of our emotional part of the brain, our thalamus. If you remember from the previous workshop, actually our eyes and the olfactory bulbs, they're extension directly from our brain, and especially the olfactory bulb from our limbic system. And the part of the limbic system is our thalamus. During the development in embryo, we get from the pharyngeal arch different part of our nose. And how you see on the pictures where it is looks like embryo, it is mentioned the place where starts different part of the nose. It is like nasal pit, it is medial part of the nose, it is the lateral part of the nose. And during the development, the left and the right side of the embryo, just they close in the middle and form our nose. How you're able to see on the right side of that slide, where we have representation of the embryo in different stages. And finally, we get the state of baby with left and right part of our face just close in the middle. Actually, the central line of our face is regarding the positioning of the left and right, because how you see, even in development during the embryology, we separate the embryo to the left and right, and in different weeks of our development, we start to get closer to the central line, left and right part of our body. And finally, the organs where they're situated during the central line, they start to be one. They close in the central line two parts, the left and right. That is the positioning of our nose, of our cavity of our mouth, and during the all the body, through the all the well of the body. Okay, then we go to the next slide. The next slide is a representation for you of our nose. Our nose is placed on the facial part of our head, and how I told you, have different tissue like a structure. We have a bone part, what is represented from our nasal bone, and on the tip and more flexible part of our nose is represent of different kind of cartilage. They have actually different direction and different flexibility. Inside of our nose, if we have a cross section of our head, we see that actually the cavity of nose is like a hole. And also around the nose, we have the cavity of different kind of sinuses. During the development after our delivery, our sinuses starts to open in different ages. Actually, from the beginning, we have opening of the like a hole. The sinus is like a ethmoidal and sphenoidal, and the frontal and maxillar sinuses, they are open after the age of 7 and 8. So the sinuses have so specific function for our head, but will be not they are not the subject of our explanation today. But they're important of the formation of the airflow inside of the nose cavity. So how you see on the cross section, we have the bone part of our nose and the cartilage part of our nose. Above that, we have muscles from the face. We have a derma, and then the epidermis of the skin of our face. Then we go to the next slide. The next slide is a representation of different shape of nose. How other part of our body, the nose, also have different kind of shapes, not only during the central os, but also regarding the nostrils and the middle wall they make between them. In the center of the slide, it is schematic representation of structure of our nose. And how you see it is similar to the shape of the reactor. It is so funny, but it is actually like that. We have two enters of the airflow inside of our nose, and then the airflow just have specific direction inside of our nose cavity. Actually, when air comes inside of the nose cavity, starts to form three different pathways. This is the superior, middle, and the lower airflow. Different airflows, they have different function inside of the nose cavity. Also regarding Ayurveda, for example, and pranayama, they are useful for increasing different energies inside of our body. So regarding the shape of nose, in traditional medicine, also alternative medicine, we're able to recognize different diseases. For example, so specific is shape of the nose in the patient where they get a state of syphilis, where the nose starts to deform. The bones part of the nose starts to get different specific deformation. Also different kind of diseases like emotional diseases, mind diseases, also they're represented with different kind of shape of the nose. Shape of the nose is also connected with different ethos and the people with different motherhood different ethnos they represent with during the centuries. This is like statistic. They represent with specific shape of the nose. Even when we see some person, we are able to recognize what kind of genes this person carry just from the shape of the nose. Okay, then we go to the next slide. The next slide is the cross section of the nose cavity, and it is represent the cavity inside. How you see, this is the shape of the butterfly, or this is the so similar shape of our brain. If you remember the previous workshop, I showed you the cross section of the two hemispheres. They are on the same shape. Actually, all over our body, we have a repetitive model of the shapes in different organs, in different cavities. They form mostly several shapes and they repeat all over the body. That shape is represent for you different pathway of the air inside of our nose cavity. In the cross section is visible for you. It is mentioned the superior turbinate in the medical language. This is the superior, middle, and lower concha, and between them is formed the flow of the air inside of our nose cavity. Actually, different flow of the air reach different part of the pharyngeal wall of our pharyngeal cavity. And what is the important? Because if we think and regarding the key of technology, with air we put inside of our nose different kind of gases what the air contains in specific in our region where we are living. So actually with that flow we channelize directly to trigger the part of the pharyngeal wall and some part of the pharyngeal wall. If you remember, this is the touching point with our uvula, so we get directly in touch with our emotional part, with our thalamus, even just because we have a channeling of air flow. And on the top of the nose cavity, this is the formation of olfactory bulb. This is the zone where we recognize different kind of smells. On the bottom of the slide is a representation for you the lacrimal glands. This is the glands where you produce your tears, but actually the gland is on the eye area, but all the ducts they go inside of your nose, and actually one part of the tears what you're not released through your eyes, they are released through your nose. So mostly our nose have a lot of functions. This is not only a breathing function, this is also how you see the collection and to take it out from our body, the tears. Also, this is regarding the smell, and during our explanation, you see some kind of gland function of our nose. Then we go to the next slide. The next slide is representation of the mucus inside of our nose. Actually, it is regarding of function. We have different kind of organization of the mucus in our nose. Different part of our nose have different kind of function. It is again regarding the channeling of air flow. But mostly the organization of the mucus is like epithelium part. Epithelium is represented from the ciliary hair cells. They have some kind of hair on the above, and this hair recognize different specific particles where they contain inside of the ear. Also above the cilia, we have that we have the mucous blanket. This is the liquid state which actually make the epithelium moist. It is not dry all the time. We have some kind of liquid water state above the epithelium, and behind the epithelium we have different smooth muscles. They are again organized in different directions, and above the muscles we have the derma with different glands inside. Actually, in that part, the glands organize that mucus, the liquid state what we have above the epithelium. Okay, then we go to the next slide. The next slide is a representation of innervation of our nose. Mostly our nose is innervated from nervus facialis, and how you see, this is the main nerve from our face. And again, we have the cross pathway between the two hemispheres. And this innervation is mostly of the face part of our skull and also inside of the nose. This is not the nerve with who we are able to smell. This is the nerve regarding the other functions of our nose. This is like innervation of the muscles, of epithelium, of the secretion of the glands, but it is not regarding the smell function of our nose. Okay, the next slide. It is a representation of the more specific function of our nose. This is the smell, how we are able to recognize the smell and why actually we need to have that kind of function in our nose. If we look the evolution of different beings in our planet, and how I represented you in the previous workshop, that from the beginning, most of beings, they have a horizontal shape regarding the surface of the planet. There was on the same level like a placement of the star formation. Then during the evolution, the human beings starts to be vertical being of that planet. So actually we change the zone where we are able to take the air. Actually, the air on the planet have different levels, and the containment on the gases and gases in different levels above the surface of the earth, they are so important for organization of the consciousness of different beings. So when we start to walk like a beings on that planet, so we needed the organ which was able to recognize different kind of smells. But actually, what is the smell? This is the combination of different molecules. And regarding the key of technology, this is combination of different gases, single or mixture gases. How we spoke before, the olfactory bulb, this is the direct extension of our emotional part of the brain. This is our thalamus. And how you see, have a specific shape. This is directly placed above the cribriform plate. This is the part of the nose bone, and actually inside of the cribriform plate we have walls and holes. Inside of that holes we have extension from the olfactory bulb. That extension, this is the actually axons of the cells inside the olfactory bulb. They go inside of the mucosa and form different kind of cells. What? They are placed inside the olfactory epithelium. Actually, the mucosa epithelium on that part, which is related with the smell function, is a different organization than the other mucosa inside of the nose. We have again the mucus part, the liquid part, where actually all the molecules of odorants, they are dissolved inside of that liquid state. And how you know, it is more easy to accept different molecules when they are dissolved inside of the liquid state of how we say water, but actually that is the mixture. This is not only water molecule, but all the odorants, all the gases, what we have inside of the air. Then that odorant molecules, or how we call regarding the Kiev technology gas, they start to trigger the, how you see the cell, they have some kind of arms, fingers, and we call dendrites. They start to trigger that receptor, and inside of the olfactory epithelium, nervous cells starts to organize the nervous impulse. Interesting is, so the different cells, they are specific to accept different kind of gases. Actually, we have 100 million different acceptor cells where they are able to accept specific molecules. They are not acceptors for the all odorants molecules. They specify in fields to accept the specific molecules. And when they accept the signal from the odorant, they generate the specific nervous impulse and then transcend that nervous impulse to the olfactory bulb. Inside that olfactory bulb start the formation of glomeruli. Glomeruli, how you remember from the kidney organization, here the glomeruli is only contain the nervous cells and the axons and dendrites of the nervous cells. They don't have any artery or the venous vessels inside. So different glomeruli, they contain the signals from specific cells inside the olfactory epithelium. So what does mean? When we accept the signal of the specific odorant molecule, that signal transcends by specific nervous cell inside the olfactory epithelium, and that olfactory cell transcends that signal to the specific glomerule. So actually we have a containers of that signals in the same number how much we have cells inside the olfactory epithelium. If we have the cell to accept the ammonium odorant, so we have the glomerule who accept only ammonium-shaped odorant. After the collection of the nervous impulse inside of the glomeruli, we have we retranscend the nervous signal to the mitral cells, and then they collect all the signals inside the olfactory bulb and retranscend through the olfactory tract to the frontal part of our brain. Actually, we have so cascade organization inside of our olfactory system, and everything is so particularly organized in folders. And how you see on the right side of that slide, that is the specific shape of olfactory bulb. Then we have a hose inside of the bone structure, and how the dendrites of the glomerular cells go inside of the olfactory epithelium. On the left side, on the bottom, this is more schematic view of that process. Actually, the olfactory sensory cells, they form some kind of net on the level of the epithelium. And because they form that kind of net, they are able to cover all the epithelium surface inside of the olfactory part of our nose. Okay, then we go to the next slide. The next slide, this is more schematic view and more easy for you to understand how the signals transform from the epithelium to the nervous system. We have an odorant. This is the molecule which triggers specific receptors inside of the olfactory epithelium. Mostly they are dissolved inside of the mucus layer. Then they trigger the olfactory acceptor cells, and how you see they're even in different colors. It is more easy for you to understand that different odorants, they are able to go inside of the epithelium through different cells. So different cells accept different kind of molecules. If we compare with the knowledge what Mr. Keshe gave to us, it means that with different cells we accept different gases inside of olfactory epithelium. Then that gases organize in the storage bank. This is the glomerular layers. You see the glomerular, they are like a balls. They are again in different colors. What they mean, they are the storage bank from different molecules, different gases, and then these different gases organize in the tracts during the mitral cells and go inside the olfactory tract, nervus olfactorius, and different part of the limbic system and the frontal cortex. On the right side, it is representation for you, the glomerula. They are like a balls, and if you compare with the glomerula inside of the kidney, they have absolutely the same shape. This is the shape of a reactor. This is actually that ball. We know the shape of ball. This is the shape where we're able to store the energy, to store the DC. And actually, all the glomerula inside the olfactory epithelium, they are the storage bank. They store gases. And then they organize, then flow through the olfactory tract to the emotional part of in our limbic system. On the bottom of the slide, this is the anatomical picture, microscopic, of the glomerula. And how you see, this is so absolutely the same shape and structure like the glomerula of our kidney, but only with contained nervous system. This is not circulatory system inside, but the shape of the structure and the materials inside is the same. Okay, then we go to the next slide, and the next slide is video representation for you, actually how we accept the odorants and the molecules through our test. Two systems, they work
if you
together,
can't smell,
and they are supportive to we be able to accept the flavor from air and from food. Could you please, Rick, just play the video? Thank you.
You probably can't taste very well either. They are closely related functions. Receptor cells for taste and smell are located in the mouth and nose, respectively. As the receptor cells are stimulated, they send impulses from these organs to the brain's smelling and tasting centers in the cortices. For taste, impulses stimulated by the chemical compounds in food are sent to the gustatory cortex. For smells, impulses stimulated by chemical compounds in odors are sent to the olfactory cortex. As new compounds stimulate the receptors, the brain forms an odor memory bank so that it can recall the odors the next time they are present.
Okay, that's the video. Thank you. We'll go to the next slide, I guess.
Yes, and how you see the presentation from video, if you notice it, actually our olfactory bulb that was in blue color, this is actually behind our eyes. This is if you make the cross section of our heads, they are so close to our eyes, but if you look like a 3D model, you may accept the olfactory bulbs. They're actually again in the role of eyes. But with them, we accept the gas from the gas state of matter, air, and with our eyes, we accept the gas with the light state of matter, through from light. Actually, there it is no how to explain. It is not need to accept the eyes that is only there represent in our body, like on the function of eyes. You have to look each organ in our body. This is the main function, and then to compare with different parts of our body. Then you will get idea how many organs we have that they behave like eyes, or how many organs we have that they behave like a tongue. So this is it is not only because they are placed in the specific place in our body, but you have to compare the shape, you have to compare the function also, and relation with the nervous system. So with the next slide, I want to represent you how actually is working the olfactory system. When the odorant molecule reach the specific receptor inside the olfactory epithelium, that receptor is able to accept only specific shape of odorant. When specific odorant come to the specific receptor and they get in touch, that connection activate the specific chemical reactions inside of the cell, the nervous cell inside the olfactory epithelium. And how you see, we again have inside of that reaction, again it's involve the adenosine phosphate and releasing the organic phosphor. So even here is visible that all reaction we have the fingerprint to our DNA. Actually, we start with that connection between the odorant molecule and a receptor, starts the first cascade of opening of potassium calcium channels. This is the first depolarization of the membrane, and then we have the second one with activation of the energy substances like ATP. After that activation, then the calcium channels, they start to activate the chlorine channels, and because of that, the potassium and the sodium, they start to exchange between them. Actually, how you see all the time, we have the pumping mechanism between the potassium and sodium, calcium, and chlorine, with activation from the ATP and releasing the organic phosphor, what is the fingerprint to our DNA, how Mr. Keshe said. Okay, then we go to the next slide. The next slide is a more schematic view of the olfactory system. So it is placed in different shape, the odorant molecules, how they are and regarding that, the different shape of the receptors, so only the specific shape of molecule are able to interact of the specific receptors. Then they trigger the olfactory receptor nervous cells inside of the epithelium. All the nervous system collect inside of the glomerula, and through the mitral cells, they form the olfactory tract, and olfactory tract goes to the neocortex. And how you see on the right side, actually, this is some kind of mapping inside of olfactory epithelium, and after that, the mapping of olfactory bulb. If you consider different colors, like different gases. So we have places, gas mapping places inside of the olfactory epithelium and the same in olfactory bulb. So actually different gases, they are able to trigger specific places inside of olfactory bulb, and that place of olfactory bulb is in connection with different parts of neocortex. And how you see, epithelium is separated of the zone 1, 2, 3, 4 on the same way is this olfactory bulb, and from that zones different signals go to different part of neocortex. So it means from air we accept different gases where they, even from the beginning, from the peripheria, from epithelium, there start to have channels and folders where they're supposed to reach our brain. Okay, then we go to the next slide. The next slide is the microscopic and laser view of different part of the olfactory epithelium receptors, how they looks like, and how you see different gases reach the olfactory bulb during different time. They are not reached in one go, the olfactory bulb. They have a path time, how much time they need to reach the brain. And because of that, again, regarding the time, we have a gapping, making a gapping and a mapping of our brain. And how you see on the bottom, this is actually cross section, microscopic cross section of the brain of a rat, but with different colors, they make a map of the olfactory bulb. And actually, because our nervous system is so close to that of the rat, our mapping inside of the olfactory bulb is the same. And how you see, this is the storage place with different molecules. And how we consider this is the storage place of different gases inside the olfactory bulb. And actually this is form some kind of barcode. So when we breathe, the part of the air which reach the portion of olfactory epithelium starts to be decoded from the ciliate cells, and then after the decoding, different gases, different signals starts to follow different channels, and through different channels reach different part of olfactory bulb for different time, and then part the similar part of neocortex. Okay. Then we go to the next slide. The next slide is again a representation of mapping, where this is the storage place with different molecules. And how you see, this is exactly looks like a barcode. And actually with our olfactory organs, we are able just to read what kind of gases, what kind of molecules have inside of the part of air what we breathe inside of our nose. On the right side, you see even the mapping where we are able to store the smell of a meal or banana. They are stored in specific places in our olfactory bulb, and they ever stored there. They never change the place because they are with connection with that specific part with our brain. Okay, then we go to the next slide. The next slide is a representation of that. If you remember, I told you that receptors have specific shapes, and they're able to connect with specific shapes of molecules. Actually, the shape of the receptors, they're in the shape of the diamond 3D structure. And mostly the molecules that when they produce smell, they are rich of benzoic rings, one or several. And when the benzoic rings they are organized in the 3D models, they reach different kind of diamond structures. And because of that, if you remember, Mr.Keshe explained to you that the smell actually have a diamond structure. And when you see on the right side of that slide, the benzoic ring, actually the arms, this is the hydrogen, and how the hydrogen organize around the benzoic ring. To the next slide, you'll be see what is the importance of that. Okay, that slide is again a representation of the receptors, how they attract and connect with odorant, and how you see the 3D model of the odorant. They have different kind of shapes, but all the time in space they organize in diamond structure. How because of them connection starts to the chemical reaction, and actually all the benzoic rings, they are organization of the carbon number of carbon atoms inside of the benzoic ring. And how you see on the bottom of that slide, different number of the carbon atoms, they have different shapes. Also, have a really interesting investigation how you are able to have the same shape, for example, the diamond structure, but if you change the hydrogen atoms from hydrogen to deuterium, smell starts to be completely different. So it is not only smell depends of the shape of the odorant, also depends of the electrons which have inside of the molecules. On the right side, you see the difference between the smell when the molecules contain the hydrogen and when contain the deuterium. Okay, with the next slide, it is already measured the difference inside of the molecules when they have different kind of numbers of electrons and protons. Even they have the same shape, they have different level of energy in them. And how you see on the bottom of the slide, we have the same shape, but we have the rich with electrons or the poor of electrons molecules. And regarding that, they store different amount of energy inside of them. Okay, and regarding that, when we accept the GANs, so we accept the GANs regarding the shape, but how you see, we accept the GANs also regarding the amount of energy which is carried in. And then all that flow with the molecules, impulses, gases, this is depends of the level of the speaking what we have, they start to go inside of the nerve paths, and you see on the left side they are also in different colors because there are paths from specific molecules, from the specific impulse for the specific gas materials. And then because of that we have finally a mapping of our brain. So actually our brain finally contain different gases, accept different gases, but make the gases, amount of gases in folders. Okay, then we go to the next slide. The next slide is its representation, more schematic, when we generate that impulse, when we take inside of us through breathing the gas, how actually all the impulse more mathematically point of view is organized and where actually goes and why. With organization of the impulse inside of olfactory bulb, we reach different part of our brain, but mostly we reach the lymphatic system. Thalamus is part of that system. This is the anxious one part of our brain. With that part is controlling our behavior, our emotions, our fears, our joy, and the consciousness of existence. And actually, different impulses regarding what kind of molecules they are triggered from, they reach different part of lymphatic system. And regarding that, with different smells, actually, we are able to trigger our emotions, to have more fears or to have more joys. And after that, after we start to organize our emotions, this is the next part, we start to act. Other part of our lymphatic system, this is the hippocampus, this is below the thalamus, it is regarding the action after we feel something. So actually, through the brain and through air, when we accept different molecules and different gases, we feed directly our emotional part of the brain. And after that, through the pathways inside of the two hemispheres, we start to organize our specific behaviors and motions of our physical body. Okay, then we go to the next slide. The next slide is a representation with other one function of our nose. This is so specific function of, so specific like a gland, part of the olfactory epithelium, and this is regarding acceptance of pheromones. Because of pheromones, we are able to recognize our species, what kind of species we are when we meet someone. And how you see, this is so close to the olfactory bulb. Actually, the nervous signal after we accept the pheromones from air make, and how the horse make his mouth, and the nostrils just go up, and actually that movement on the nose and mouth trigger that part of olfactory epithelium. And then the nervous system go inside, the nervous impulse signal go inside the olfactory bulb and reach again the limbic area. So actually we have a larger brain than the other species before us. In our evolution in embryology, we repeat all the state of animals. When we born on the shape of vertical bank. So actually we are animals inside of the tree. And how you see, we have a larger brain than the other animals, and we have a lot of extensions from our brain to outside to be able to reach and feed our emotional part and then our physical part of the brain with different gases, what we are able to take from light, from air, and from solid matter. And how Mr.Keshe said, we do everything to satisfy our emotional part and our emotional part in the same way. This is the feeding system from our physical part of our being. So that is from my side. If you have a questions, please ask me, and thank you very much for attention.
Thank you, Elia. Another great presentation there. Had no idea there's so many connections to the nose. Okay, do we have any questions? Anybody on the Skype call who has a question? There's Kevin. Kevin has a question.
Yeah, that's a question for Dr. E.Kostova and also, of course, for Mr. Keshe. From a holistic point of view, Elia, because you're, one of the few holistic teachers I've met, we've always heard that smell is somehow conveyed on a subconscious level. And when Mr. Keshe talks about, when you want to know the intention or the what do you call it, the essence of a person, shake his hand. I think he said, Mr. Keshe said that on certain occasions or instances in all the workshops, in some of the workshops. And now I want to do an analogy to the smelling. Now, if you are near a person, I guess you most probably do smell on a very subconscious level. What kind of effect does that have on the behavior or on the knowing the information and the emotional part of the brain? Is there some kind of connection? Do you understand what I'm trying to
Yeah, I
get at?
understand you very well. Yeah,
Thank you.
every bank have a specific smell. Actually, through our skin, we have a pores and we have a sweat. And our sweat have inside the aromatic molecule, benzoic rings. And our sweat actually have a smell odor. And all the odors, they are dissolved inside of the air. And when you just meet some person and you are close to some person, you are able to smell him. Also, regarding the venor organ, what we call the pheromonic organ, you just smell the pheromones, they go through the skin, because all of us, we have a secretion of the pheromones of our limbic system, but they go in, out of us to our sweat. And actually, you smell the pheromones first, and the second, you smell the molecules what that person just take it out from the body through skin. And if regarding that smell is good for you, is matched to you, you trigger that point of your brain that is make you satisfied, happy, joyful. If it's not, trigger the other part of your brain where actually the amygdala, and this is the part where contain all your fears. And when someone is angry or violent, adrenal glands starts to produce a huge amount of adrenaline. And adrenaline, this is the hormone of stress, but also go through your sweat and skin, so you are able to smell it. And all the animals, they are able to smell the adrenaline in other animals. So, and because of that, they take some kind of position for defense or to attack or whatever. So actually the smell even have a large Japanese investigation about the brain, and then discovered that the olfactory part of the brain is the previous one, which is the more important than other part of the brain for everything. And even if you're not able to see and to test, and is so olfactory part is working, because this is the direct extension of your limbic system, and the limbic system, this is the premature one, this is the first one part, which contain the most survival function inside. So because of that, this is the how to say, outside a receptor for that system. And actually through smell, you are able to recognize the behavior of someone, to recognize the emotional state, energy state. Actually, in our century, we are lost more or less that ability. But if you look the animals, they are so good for that. Or if you have the training in Chinese medicine or even in Tibetan medicine, this is the one of the most important tests of the therapist to patient to test the smell through smelling. So if you are trained enough, it's a so useful part to use, you know.
Thank you. It was very enlightening. Can I ask you one more question? Is there a way to enhance or improve this function, this capability that we once obviously had in a better with a better function?
Yeah, with pranayama, this is the breathing techniques in yoga. There are a lot of it is regarding which one part you want to increase or develop or whatever. The pranayama, this is the one of the method of that breathing techniques
Oh,
in yoga
I
Ayurveda.
okay. I just
Yeah,
saw the from Iyengar light on pranayama. Is that something like you're talking about? I haven't
yeah,
read it yet. Yeah.
pranayama. Yeah, pranayama. This is the breathing techniques.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, welcome.
There, just a second here. There we go. Elia, there is a question in the live stream. Is there anything legal we can smell to make us very happy? I would suggest flowers work pretty good.
Yeah, but this is individual because for someone the smell of coffee is delicious. For someone this is disgusting. Everyone's supposed to find out what kind of gases make him happy. Do you understand? So it is so individual point of view. I cannot say this is that substance able to make all of you happy, you know?
Yeah, good point. Is there any other questions for Elia, or shall we move on to Mr.Keshe? This one question just came up. Any good cure for blocked sinuses? Again, that might go back to what you just said about the...
This is regarding which one sinuses, because we have a huge amount of them. And they have so many cures, and actually the sinuses, they are blocked because of inflammation inside of the mucosa, but have different explanations of that. Have the holistic explanation and have the traditional medical explanation. So this is like some kind of different subject, you know, and actually it is so large because all the sinuses, they make equilibrium between the atmospheric pressure and the pressure inside of our head. And because of that, we get different diseases in them, you know. This is like so huge information I supposed to explain to get the answer of that question. It is not simple, you know.
Right. Okay. Maybe we should move on to Mr.Keshe now.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much for attention.
Thank you, Elia.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elia. It was a nice presentation.
You're welcome, sir.
There are a few questions which is raised here, which maybe we can answer at the end or at the beginning. It's all the same. In a simple way, that we look at the structure or the work of the nose is, in a way, we look at the mouth for the supply of energy. And as I always say, when you speak about energy, is plasmatic, magnetic, gravitational. The mouth is the supplier of energy to the physical part through the stomach. The nose, the function of nose is exactly the same, but it's the supply of energy to the emotional part of the body. So both the nose and the mouth are feeding channels. One to the emotion and one to the physicality. The nose, the work of the nose is exactly the same as the work of the stomach. But the stomach's work and function is a conversion of the matter into the gas state, and the nose does the same thing but sends the food into the lung and converts that much more rapidly for the brain. That's why we can eat food 2-3 times a day or once a day and physicality can carry on. But we need to breathe so rapidly because the operation of the brain uses so much energy that it continuously demands energy. And that energy automatically is absorbed and extracted from the environment through our nose, through the lungs and the nose itself for the operation. Again, the nose, in the evolution of the man, the brain has decided to put sensors that certain gravitational magnetic fields means separate things to the emotional part. If the field strength is at certain level, this means danger. If it is a certain level, it's pleasure. If it's a certain level, it's just something you have to be careful with. So the nose and the position of the nose is extremely vital for the operation of the brain, especially the emotional part. And in a way, the shape of the nose, why it's sticking out, is to make sure it's like a radar. It's not just what goes inside it, what is absorbed on the skin of it is as important what it goes inside it. The information transfer from the nose is extremely vital for the operation of the emotional and the physical part of the body of the man. The food of the brain comes through the nose. But in so many ways, which Dr. Elia did not refer to, is that in your cores you have a feeding line and then you feed into a core. The nose has its own core. It's highly compact, extremely efficient, and it's exactly like the cores you've seen with center core inside it. Last week we explained about the tongue being in the core of the mouth and the center core being the tongue. On the top of your nose there is a very tiny bone which behaves and creates a specific field in the cavity which is exactly like a core and sits right between your two eyes, just above the sinuses or just between the sinuses. This core, this center core, behaves exactly as if you could go back to the work of the black core when we're using the gas reactors, which had no connection, it was loose, it could go any direction. Or the same as the spherical uranium reactor, the white one we saw last week, where the center core is not attached to the outer core, but its motion absorbs and rejects fields as it likes. So it vibrates inside. And we used to use these cores for absorbing or shock absorbing the fields from the star formation. If you go back to the workshops, the very early workshops, when we speak about these black cores or the Iranian small cores, they have a loose core inside. So what happens in the bone, which is in the center of this core in the about top of the nose or in front of your forehead, the vibration of this bone by the fields which pass through it dictates what plasmatic magnetic field is absorbed, what is received, and what is about to come through the field conversion. If you remember, we explained in the last teaching and in other teachings of the health section, the minute the food enters the back of the throat, enters a magnetic gravitational field environment, and it does not behave as matter anymore. Very much like the water in your cores, when you put it with GANs, even this water, it behaves like a GANs. Because it's made of atoms. Atoms are made of a magnetic field, gravitational fields of the electrons and protons and neutrons. The same thing happens in this cavity in the bone. So, as the air passes through the front of the nose, enters a plasmatic magnetic field environment, which is covered by your skin and the muscle or tissues on top of the bone, and then as it enters a bone structure. And this is very much fixed. So it has a constant, perfect field strength from the environment around it, and this bone in the middle, by its movement, by its field absorption, from now that the air has become in the GANs state, absorbs the strength, different magnetic gravitational field strength, the same as the pores on the tongue, and dictates what this material is, what it is carried. And then, as is the same as a core, it's like your star formation. When you have a top core and you have a bottom core, the fields between the two interact and they are connected like a trinity. The vibration and the energy which is created in this bone, as is a plasmatic condition, is transferred immediately to the thalamus as a trinity. And the information carried to it informs the emotional part what is happening around it, from the environment, from the air which flows much faster than the matter. Don't forget, we smell an object long before we see it with the eye. So the brain has already made a decision. It can smell danger. It can absorb the smell of the, let's say, a lion from a distance before you could even smell it, because it's so sensitive detective. So now the same position again. In this cavity there is a liquid, very much moisture. The bone is very much moist. The same as the operation of the lung with the moisture on it, the same as the stomach and intestine moisture on it, same as the tongue in the mouth. It's the repetition of the same process. Conversion of the matter into a GANs, energy plasma transformation. Not all the energies are absorbed by the nose as the air goes through. This is done in a way that the body, the physicality, it gets informed of like what food is to come, what is here to be absorbed by physicality too. That from the odor, from the smell, the body has established through RNA a chart. These things are edible, these things are not edible. It's not that when you see it with the eye, the smell has already come to the nose and made the decision not to. In fact, in a lot of cases, when it's head-on collision accident, if this part right in front of the nose, on top of your forehead between the eyes, hit the front screen, or if you get punched or have an accident that this spot where this bone is positioned creates a condition that the bone sticks to one side of the core or moves from its position and it cannot hold in the position it was before due to sudden rapid interaction, you can lose the sense of smell and smell of your the environment. Majority of the loss of smell is due to dislocation of this tiny bone in the forehead. Keshe Foundation has developed a technology which we can return most of this back in majority of the cases. If the center core, this bone, is not stuck to the physical part of the core, it creates a short circuit. If you can create a condition to release this bone from the walls of the core, you find people bring the smell, you can bring the smell and taste back. And the only way it can be done is very much that you create a gravitational magnetic field in the core that, like the two ganses or two nanolayers, they cannot stick to each other. They release, they get released, and then you get a taste and a smell back. Because the taste is connected through a nerve in the back of the nose to the tongue nerve for the taste. We have done this operation in respect to the coma patient we had, and it's videoed very clearly, and the doctors told us that she's lost the smell due to the head injury, and it took me 2 weeks to build the system. We tested with the pharmacy which was across the road 22 different smells, from ammonia to rose and everything else, and it was confirmed there is no sense of a smell left due to the head-on collision she had in the car. And after 2 weeks in running and developing a technology for it that it could release this bone, she could smell everything we gave her. The same 22 smells was tested more or less every day, and then she could smell because we managed to move this bone away from its position which was stopped. This is exactly what you do in your reactors. When you have a loose center reactor, then the reactors stick to each other, they create a short circuit, gravitational magnetic field, and then there is no vibration to absorb other fields. Something which is very important and vital, that is to remember all the time in the operation of the body of the man, you deal with the already converted matter to a GANs state once it enters the environment of the body. But at the same time, go back to the same process. The physical food and the physical air, as we spoke last week, once they enter at the front of the nose or the mouth, they transfer the matter state energy to become a gans, to become nano-sized in the plasmatic condition. As you did with your CO2 kits, you create the energy. That energy in the matter level is immediately absorbed for the physical body, as we explained with the tongue from the nose, for the operation of the order of the body too, at a matter physical level. That the order, as you asked the question, converts in a matter strength crystal structure that it can be smelled by the others. That continuous order production in a physical state, crystal state, comes from the energy in the matter level, which the air enters your nose, immediately absorbed by the body before it becomes a gans of it. So it gets a constant matter level structure and it gets spread through the skin that you can smell. That it changes a gans to a matter state crystal structure. The vital importance of the operation of the nose is the feeding, and as it feeds the emotional part, is the information carrier storer for the RNA, as the physical part through the stomach is a physical supply for DNA. So your emotion, your understanding of the environment, what you smelled which was wrong, it cannot be eaten again, because physicality reports to physical side, is all recorded through the blood to your neurosystem, immediately to all the RNAs in every single cell in the body of the man. Because it's the energy transfer. It's like a speaker with millions of listeners at the same time listening to the same thing. So the energy absorbed through the nose to the detection and the conversion to information is like a loudspeaker, is transferred to your RNA through the blood, through the nose. And this is where RNA receives its energy continuously, through a blood circulation, through the emotional part. And it gets updated continuously. Dr. Elia in the talk, in her part, explained that there are similar structures in the nose as there are in the kidney. There are similarities. Of course there are. It has to be. Because the kidney absorbs to this position the waste products which is in the lymph, which is transferred to it, as much as what might come through the blood. But at the same time, the kidney is the cleaner of the blood. So the energy absorbed by the nose from the air, which is not needed, then it gets transferred back at the point of not being needed, like the water we don't need, we reject through the, what do you call it, the gravitational magnetic field of the matters which are within the lymph. The kidney has a system which gets rid or dispose of the emotional energies which has been absorbed by the nose in the blood or by the lung. Up to now, everybody in the world of science always thought that the job of kidney is only rejecting what is surplus in physicality. But in fact, the most part of the job of the kidney is cleaning up the emotional waste too. which is the energy which is absorbed from the air. Where does this energy go, which is not needed or is surplus or is being partially used, which is not in the strength of the cells of the human body? As much as the kidney dispose of liquid, as we think in the matter level, it disposes of the energy of the air which the man breathes, which is not usable. That's why you see similarity. The same way as you absorb, the same way you repel and reject. That's why in the animal kingdom, the smell, if there is a urine left, because it carries the emotion, which is being rejected by the body, which is not at the level or the level they can smell. It's not so much odor. They know, they understand through that what is the condition. If the animal is sick, pardon is good or bad. So this is part of the whole structure that the emotional part of the brain, which is a thalamus, has created for itself what it needs, then it has made the system for it to get rid of it. Otherwise your blood will be full of wasted energy. So it disposes emotional energy through the same. In so many ways, I was explaining this to the knowledge seekers past few days, or a couple of weeks ago. One of the first things when people get arrested and cornered by the police, they can tell you when they arrest them, like thieves which they hide somewhere and they find them, is that they let urine pass and they wet themselves. Because it's the relief of the emotion that there is no fear, there is no danger. Because up to now being caught is dangerous. If something's going to go and happen wrong. And when you're captured, you let go. That's why a lot of time people wet themselves. Not because of anything else, but the amount of the energy which is blocked in the blood system, which goes through the kidneys, and then it gets released in one go, because the emotion is there. That's how you get rid of emotional energy, through urine, because it's the only way the blood system can release it. So the nose is not just a system of getting air in, but in fact controls everything to do with the human's life on the emotional side. In so many ways, your nose, the energy absorbs, is connected to every single cell in the body of the man through its DNA operation, and at the same time it tells the physicality what it needs to take. And when the balance between the emotional part and the physical part is correct in digesting something, which is what you smell through your nose, matches to what you taste through the neural system of the physicality, then you get addicted, because it's balance. Part of the food eaten and addiction to the food is because there is a balanced gravitational magnetic field between the smell of the food energy and the physical food energy. And some people, according to their balance in thalamus, go for simple, single food, repetition of, let's say, chips. There are people who only eat chips whole day long, whole their life, for years and years. And the more connoisseur they become people, those people will accept the mixture of the smells and the taste. And nowadays this has become fashionable, that we change and mix to see how far we can extend this knowledge of the information between the nose and the taste nervous system of the mouth. And we mix all sorts of foods and taste together just to challenge our own physical system. In so many ways, the structure of the air we breathe in is a composite air. Not all the oxygens are of the same strength, as we explained. Oxygens released by a plant, by a tree, by a bush is different. It's composite. And that composite oxygen, when it's entered the body of the man, creates different field strength. And that field strength creates, once it's converted to a gas, as you've seen it, different strength gives you the same size CO2 or copper oxide or CH3. So the body knows which it needs more and which one it doesn't need to reject. Or it has to go back to another part of the body like the lung for it to be absorbed or converted, because at that level, very much, the wall of the lungs, as we explained in the session with the lungs, is the same as the intestine. Each part of the lung absorbs a specific kind of plasmatic magnetic field energy for specific blood cells for a specific part of the body. And that's what I call taxi destination. You go to the top for the emotion, you go to the bottom part of the lung for the physical part, neurosystem emotion. And in so many ways, the whole structure of the nose is an information bank for the body of the man. In what it needs, what it can do, and what it needs to absorb, even for the physicality, for it to be operational. And as we explained, and was explained before, as the odor is diamond structure, body creates a diamond structure cells, because as we said, doves with doves, wolves with wolves. Each element, crystal structure, which changes into GANs, creates a different plasmatic gravitational magnetic field strength, and that can be absorbed by a specific matching, like a magnet for a wood, magnet for a plastic, magnet for metals. So each cell on the body of the man, in the nose, decides what is going to absorb from it and what is going to give from it. In a way, as I was explaining earlier in the Chinese session, when your emotion does not fit to the energy which is absorbed through your nose, through the air, the sense of fear leads to asthma attack. Physicality knows the air comes, blocks itself, and creates fear. Then you get the condition of the breathing restriction, because prior to energy being absorbed by the lung, the nose has already informed the physicality don't match. So the physical part of the lung shuts itself down. Then we call it asthma attacks. Why we are allergic, asthmatic, or we show breathing restriction in certain conditions and certain environments and certain people. Because we absorb energy, which to us, the emotional part of our breathing, the nose, does not accept to match the physicality. In our physical being, in our emotion. If the emotional does not match physicality, you get anger. If the emotion does not match the physicality of the emotion, you get asthma attack, get restriction with the physicality of the breathing. This could be odor of the grass. This could be the odor of person, or could be anything. But at the same time, when this condition happens, in the childhood stage, at the time when the brain is getting developed in the emotional and physical side, teaches something very wrong to the body of the man. Creating such a condition brings me attention. And the attention seeking changes the gravitational magnetic field strength in the center bone on top of the nose. Even is self-attention seeking, not necessarily anybody else's. Because I need more attention on my physical part, which I'm not getting. Goes back to the teaching of the Christ, bless his name. He says, thou shalt not steal. The biggest thief of the man is the man himself in respect to his physicality and emotion and soul. And when you steal from your emotional side, your physical side does not accept. So the interaction comes in a way of what we call asthma attack. Because the condition of the energy absorbed is changed through the emotional side, through the blood circulation. And in cases, the emotional energy matches the physical part and it informs the physical part, and the physical part shows reaction to emotional side instead of receiving information from the physical part of the brain. This is what we spoke about, the problem with the seeds, genetically modified seeds, if you remember in the digestion section. When the modified gene is very close to the, in a way of the emotional side, you get different kind of digestion problem, as we explained before. The same thing happens when it happens in the lung of the man. Everything in the structure of the man is connected to each other. And the brain, physical part, and the emotional part have made a full system for their operation. Absorb, digest what you need, reject what you don't need, that you can have room for the new to come in. As the brain does not have any blood cells, vessels, it absorbs all its energy through transfer of plasmatic magnetic fields from the blood and partially from the lymph, depending if it's near to the physical part on the boundary of the physicality of the brain. And as you have seen in the GANS production of GANS materials, even though everything is GANS, your copper oxide does not mixes with CO2. But if you stir it the right way, you might match something, connect something with it. So every energy which comes through the nose, absorbed by the center bone, and the rest of the structure of the digestion, conversion of the matter to a gas and to energy, through the lungs and the nose and the back of the tongue, all these energies are released in a plasmatic magnetic field which spreads along right across the brain. And each one cell in the brain is tuned to absorb which one part of, which is tuned to. So they continuously receive energy through plasmatic condition and not to physical condition. And that's how the brain grows. That's why in the premature children who lack oxygen, we see the stoppage of the growth of the brain. And with the technology which we have developed and it's been tested, we have shown how easily most of a majority of the children who were born due to the lack of oxygen, which the lack of oxygen meant to the fetus, to the child at the time of birth, stop the process that we can save the other part of the brain. The switch on comes on, the switch off comes on. So that part of the brain doesn't get switched on to carry on growing, and then when the child comes out of the womb and the rest of the body has switched on, that part does not switch on because it was the first section gone. So you see disabilities due to the lack of oxygen. And this is again what the doctors don't understand. They have not understood until they understand this operation, that the blood circulation through the breathing of the air creates emotion and the growth of the brain. Then no child should be left at the time of the birth, when they see the lack of oxygen condition, to go through abnormality on a pushchair and a wheelchair till they die. They have to be expertise in the hospital that understand what happens. Physically, if you want to understand, it's very much like a hypothermia. What happens? You get stuck in the snow. Your fingers are not needed. Your toes are not needed because there is more blood needed for the heart and the operation of the brain. So the blood circulation retracts to be able to support the function of the blood, the brain. So you go through hypothermia. Organ, what do you call it, pieces of the leg, upper leg, and then everything else disconnects from the circulation to be able to deliver energy to the brain. In the point of the birth, the same thing happens in the physical part. Fear of not being able to go through the birth, brain switches off certain parts to guarantee the existence of the rest, exactly like hypothermia. And the physicians of today have not understood this. The way you can wrap the brain or leg in a warm condition and try to rejuvenate the toes and the fingers, you can do the same thing with the child at the time of the birth, when the lack of oxygen sends a wrong signal to the brain of the child. And the brain switches off to keep the emotionality because the physicality is already operational. And then you get mental dementia. And if the doctors immediately, at the time of birth, within the first 24 hours, start the process which we have developed, it'll be a normal child. No father or mother needs to carry a handicapped child due to the lack of oxygen. The older you get, the more this part is switched off, it's harder to switch it back on. This goes back again to the information which, due to the time of the birth, is left to the responsibility of the nose to carry the information that the air goes through. And as there is a delay in the air which the body is ready to absorb, then it switches part of the brain to guarantee the survival of the rest of the brain. And then that switching off could be part of the arm section, could be part of the hand section, could be part of the side section. And then the child is born with mental handicap, with a physical disability. Just 1 second.
Just having a brief break here while Mr. Keshe does some rearranging at his end. Any comments from the Skype call at this point? Okay, he's back.
Sorry about this. Sorry about this. It's part of our moving to Barry. So we have to answer a phone call for it. I do apologize. So it comes to understanding the operation. It comes to understanding the position. It comes to understanding the totality. And the physicians have not understood this. If doctors interfere immediately at the time of birth, brain comes back to normality very, very quickly. And you don't need this handicap condition. And then in the positions when these points in the brain are shut down to save the emotional part, the information transfer becomes so hard that a lot of information is created, it has nowhere to go, like a amputation. It creates a phantom pain. This creates what is known as epileptic attack and seizures with these kind of birth in some cases. So one is related to each other, and it's very simple to sort it out at the time of birth, where you send information back through the nose, through the lungs, that everything is okay, you can restart again. And the easier, the earlier this is done at the time of birth, the easier it is to retrieve the child back to normality. We have a number of these cases at the moment running around the world. And we see the development we have achieved. All over the world we are running this test now. And every single case shows us improvement and correctness of the technology. From America to Europe to other parts of the world. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Keshe. Is there any questions from, sorry?
I need Dr. Elliot to take over for about 10 minutes and I'll be back because it's important that I do something. Okay?
Thank you.
Dr. Elliot, take over. Have we lost Dr. Elliot? She's gone?
Elia, are you there?
No, I'm here. Just
Yes.
put the handset because I was removing them. I'm here. Yeah, it's okay, sir.
Okay.
No problem.
You take over. Okay, bye-bye.
Yeah, it's okay, sir. Okay. If someone have a questions.
Well, there is a question in the live stream. I'm not sure if it's appropriate. The question is, what is the right ratio of breathing, if there is one? Like 3 or 4 breaths a minute or so?
The question is the ratio for what kind of breathing? Because with breathing, you reach a different kind of level of consciousness. And actually, the technique about the breathing is regarding with duration of every gasp. That is the secrets inside of breathing techniques. So the question what the people ask supposed to be more precise, you know.
Was that the travel time you mentioned earlier in the workshop for the gases to travel through? Is that what you mean?
There are different kind of gases travel in different time. This is like a milliseconds, you know. They make some
Right.
kind of gapping. For example, if you have choose some kind of molecule X just passing the pathway like a milli 1 second, the other one will behave to pass the same pathway for milli 2 seconds. Do you understand? So not to have a crash, the traffic jam inside of the olfactory tract. All the nervous system working like this. Actually, where when you have the tracks, the track is from the hemispheres and medulla oblongata, then all the spinal cord, all inside of your spinal cord, everything is tracks, high waves of the signals. And between each two vertebrae, you organize the tracks in the ganglions, and from that ganglions, they origin different nerves which belongs to that part. But everything which comes from out or to the brain goes through high waves, and in Latin language this is the tracks. So every one highway have a specific timing. And regarding the neurotransmitters, with they are specific for that highway, they also releasing of the neurotransmitters from axon to synapse and to retranscend the impulse. They have a timing too, and actually this is also regarding the sodium potassium pump. You know, everything have a timing, but to represent here all the timings, this is the huge work. You know, this is like a half of physiology of nervous system, because this is the mapping, the gapping, the synchronization in the molecular level. The medicine reached the point that is able to make that kind of time mapping. But now this is the point to be on the next one level to see how the GANS materials make the same timing through the nervous system or in different enters what we have in our body or exits. That mapping, we still don't have it. And will be completely different because the GANS materials, we are able to take it in from different places. And actually, we are able to take one GANS material, like a simple GANS, for example, copper, but with different strength from light through our eyes, from air through our nose, mouth, like sound. So the GANS of copper with specific strength will behave as sound too, or just like a fields directly through our hemispheres. Actually, we accept one single GANS with different strength, with different receptors from different state of matter. So if we have the GANS, copper, for example, will be with one strength in air, in other strength in liquid, in other strength in plasma, you know, and then we're supposed to organize that strength and to channeling that strength to the specific part of our body, which is able to convert that strength. It's not only to convert the single GANS, but the single GANS with specific strength. Because if you send the calcium to the hip bone, will be with one strength, but the calcium in the rib bone is with other strength. And if I send the calcium with strength for the hip bone, but sent to the rib bone, will be hypercalculosa on that place. You know, I will be organize the nuance bone with the structure of the hip bone. Do you understand? This is like a Lego. Just imagine your body like a Lego, and all the parts of that Lego supposed to be in the specific place. You cannot replace in other place. Even you see some kind of similarity. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
There was another slightly more detailed question from Krasmir, who says some doctors claim that if we inhale deeply and holding before exhaling would decrease our heart rate and will bring more oxygen to the body, and thus we would live longer. Is that true?
This is regarding the function of lungs. So if you remember the workshop about the lung, mostly we collect the air on the tip of our lungs. This is the ventilation area. And the bottom of our lung, which lying on the thoracic diaphragm, is mostly vascularized. And if you remember the diagram, we have even different kind of pressure between the capillary, venous, and air system. That kind of diagram I just showed you before with the lungs and pressure like organized system. And actually in the daily life, when we breathe mostly with our tips of lung. And we don't get deep inside the air on the bottom of our lungs, where it's actually the diameter of the bronchi is so small, and we call bronchioles. And because of that, when you breathe deeply and hold, we actually energize or oxygenate the bottom of our lungs. That is the huge problem of our century. Even in my clinic, I teach the people how to breathe, and most of the disease there's because of that. And other part of that question is that through the lungs, especially on that part of the lungs, in the middle goes the nervus vagus. This is the 10th nerve of the cranial nerves. This nerve comes through the inner ear, or the pharyngeal wall, and then two sides of the trachea, heart, lungs, and stomach. And in different organs, this nerve have different function. But actually, when you breathe out in and hold, you trigger that nerve, and that nerve have the specific function to slow down the heartbeat. And actually, the traditional medicine have that kind of belief that you born with already written in your genes how much heartbeat you're supposed to have this life, you know. So they believe if you slow down your heartbeat, that you actually prolong that time. And if the people who have some kind of heart disease, they know the prop of Valsalva. When they have heartbeats or rapid, and when they breathe in and close the nose and mouth, they're supposed to calculate several seconds, and then the heartbeats will just go down. This is because of the nervus vagus.
I'm back.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
I do apologize. This is all to do with moving to Barry. Okay. Any questions I could answer? Or you answered all the questions?
Oh no, there was more medical questions, sir, because everyone here that you are not there, so now it's for you.
Okay. Any questions you want me to answer? Have we finished? All your questions have been answered. He says, my child now knows how to drink and chew, speak. Shall I read it, or have you answered this one?
No, that would be a good one for you.
So my child not knows how to drink and chew, speak. Is there a part of the brain what controls that? Yes, it is. It depends when it happened and how it's happened. Is it genetic or is it part of the process of birth? Genetic defects, it's very hard to interfere with. With genetic defects is, at this moment we don't release much information, but we know it can be done, but it's too early. But if it's part of the process of the birth, which has happened, or just after birth, most of these can be corrected to some extent. One of the biggest problems with the parents who go through this process with us is not the recovery of the child, especially at the older age, is the grasp of the understanding of the changes by the parents. Parents are used to seeing their child to be handicapped and they behave that way towards it because their need gives confirmation of existence to the parents, and because they've done it such a long time, they are not aware that due to the use and development of the brain, use of the technology and development of brain, that now they're not dealing, for example, with a 5-year-old child, they're dealing with 7-year-old in 3 months, and in 9 months they're dealing with a 14-year-old. They are trapped in the condition of looking after a 4 or 5-year-old mentally, but even the physically is much older. And this is what causes the problem. The non-changing or non-flexibility of the parents in what they have accepted restricts the child and then creates more problem for the child. We see this quite a lot. What is one of our, as I explained this to Armin, because he's handling a case like this with the foundation, is that teaching of the parents after the 3rd month becomes more important than looking after the child. That the parents have to learn to let go as the child is growing up, but at the same time, if the damage which is done through the breathing process at the time of the birth creates a lot of problem with the child if he's trying to reprocess in the later part of the life. Because they have to cover a stage of life, let's say if they are 10 years old, but mentally through lack of oxygen at birth, about 5. Now that you start growing, you do the 5 years in there to 2 years time, then the child has missed that progress. And his peers in the classroom or in the society talk about things that he doesn't understand. So now it creates a problem for the child, become reclusive, because it cannot mix with the people of the same height, but mentally different. And this is the biggest problem for us now that we know how to allow the brain to expand and to grow back to normality as much as possible. And in cases we've seen a child, age of, he was mentally 4, but physically about 7, actually mentally 2, but physically about 7, 8, when they brought him to us. And I said to the parents, he came in February, I said for next September, make him ready to go to a normal school. And they said, this is impossible, even the father is a physician. He said, this is impossible. I said, what we foresee from our experiment, this is possible. And now, after a year, he's 9 years old now, I think, 9, 10 years old. The last time they wrote to us, because now they don't need us anymore, we don't get that much feedback, is that he could go swimming on his own. He could walk about 3-4 kilometers every day. He enjoyed swimming, to go swimming and come back on his own with his bag on his back. And the strangest thing was that he was in a mental mentally handicapped children, and in the process we brought him up. He had to, when they took him to the school to enroll him in the normal school, he had to sit for a test. And he actually passed the test to be in the normal school, and he joined the society in the normal way. We have a case now in US. He is 18, 19, and mental state of 4, 5. And we have brought him up, but now he loses attention. The hierarchy is all the boy in the house. We see the physical problem between the adult who could never had an interaction with his own peers. Now he's in the adult body. Now he sees himself becoming 9, 10, 11, 12, and thereon. This process is very easy to revert. We had a case in Belgium. We had a case in other part of the world. We've seen these things. We've seen a girl of 20, 24, 25, mental age of 9, and after a year and a half, I know the family listened to this program because the family are close to the foundation. Now she started talking about getting married and having a boyfriend after about a year or so. It just depends what you're free, where you're free in the structure of the brain to match up. Shocks, lack of oxygen, through breathing can be the knowledge, technologies in the hand of the foundation. We have no hesitation to open it up into the society. But now that we are in institute, we can do it, we allow it, and we release it very rapidly. If it's not genetic, it can be helped to an extent. But the problem is how the family allow themselves to be growing fast with the child. It's not the child which is growing fast. And as I say, in the cases we have here, I ask the boy is 12 years old, mental age of 5, 4, and I said to the parents, you have to take him to the shops that he can buy comics, which 8, 9 years old read, that he can speak to his peers, he has a line of connection somewhere, that he can mix with the peers, that he does not stand out. But at the same time, some children, when they reach that point, they used to get so much attention 6 months ago from the parents, now they're growing up, they're left to grow. They go back to the back position because they still want that attention. Me, ADD. And sometimes this getting attention leads to ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity. Kinship. So the operation of the nose, the operation of breathing can affect the mental state and the structure. Even in the old people, the change of the nose, the way you breathe, changes the way you take oxygen or energy through your lungs, and then it behaves your health. This, because you smell the air different, mentally you instruct your physicality to change. The smell of life, the smell of fresh air, the smell of being part of the structure allows you to live. And you extend life because you can do it. We've seen this operation in Japan, we've seen this operation in other parts of the world. Life is difficult, we can always last the difficulties. But it's when we take different kind of energy from the air we breathe, we affect our emotion, and our emotions affect our physicality. Nose, the operation of the nose is one of the most vital part of the existence of the man. Without it, as I said, stomach without the intestine, there is no physical life. Without nose, there is no emotional life. It's the end of the death. It's the end of the physical side. That's why when you put hand on the nose, life ends very rapidly. You can starve somebody for 3, 4, 5 days to still carry on. Emotionality needs conformation of existence. And a conformation of existence comes through the flow of the different sense in the structure of the nose of the man. This is exactly what In majority of cases, physicians don't understand. You can bring an old person back to life very, very rapidly. Just 1 second, please. Sorry about this. So, it is part of the structure. This is part of the existence that physicians have to understand. We've done it before, it can be done. People who are in their 80s, 90s, they are physically good, but emotionally not there, and they are paralyzed. You can, through air, breathing, through the transfer of fields in the nose by air, convert the emotional part to be fit as good as the physicality. You find them, they walk off, they'll even sign their own checks to the bank. Man in space will live for centuries because there is no restriction of physicality. And it's so much excitement to be, if we can raise the memory of the earth or the positions of the earth, then man will live for centuries in space. Second, third, fourth generation of the space human beings would not know the earth. They have no attachment to it. And through the air they breathe, through the system they digest their food and air, they live a very long time life. It's very much like when you have children born in a different country, they have no connection where you came from. They see themselves as a citizen of the new country. And then if you change them third generation, change fourth generation to another country, they're only attached to where they are, and in the space the same thing will happen. They find peace. The first generation of man will be like the migrants, that they go back home to see if the home is still there. That's why we miss home. The air we breathed left an imprint in our RNA. Second generation of space travelers have no connection, little connection with Earth. What parents said. And the third generation will be no memories. Just the physicality of the presentation of the man in the space. Any questions?
Yes. What you're just speaking of, what would the air? How would the air be created? What would it be composed of to be useful in space, like the best air for space? Or are you talking about not having the physicality, so you don't need air?
You need air. If you have a physicality, you need air. But
right.
We control the mixture of the air to fit, to get rid of like animal behavior. Animal behavior comes out of the fear of existence. You have to defend yourself. That has certain order, that has certain strength of field strength. The composition of the air we breathe will be controlled in a very, very systematic way.
I think you mentioned before that nitrogen had a lot to do with the aggressiveness. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Nitrogen in amino acid and in the air we breathe, that's why even the divers go through the problem with when they dive.
Nitrogen narcosis, they call it.
Yeah. Nitrogen is the nuclear diffusion or nuclear centralization of the release of the energy of the hydrogen. And the more energy, the more active nitrogen you have, the more energy you release from the hydrogen vibration of the electron, or in a way what you call it vibration electron, we call it the loss of energy from the gans of the hydrogen in the amino acid, which leads to extra energy. You have to do something with it, and then something to do with it brings like hyperactivity, more motions, and then the emotion does not fit the physical motion does not fit the emotional part, and then we call it aggression or anger. The whole process can be explained in a very, very simple way. Now we understand. We know how to walk, running and jumping, as I said, is easy. So nitrogen, yes, has a capability to release rapid amount of energy on the outer layers in respect to gravitational magnetic field. Look at the structure of the nitrogen. Carbon is 8, nitrogen is 7, oxygen 16. Twins have twinity stability in neutron. Nitrogen has an extra neutron. It's unstable, so it releases as much energy as it can for the nitrogen to reach stability. And that energy which is released from the gans of nitrogen releases, excites, or reduces field forces on the hydrogen plasma in the gas state, that energy release leads that it has to be used somewhere by other things, and then it creates a traffic jam. That traffic jam of the fields have to be called what you call aggression and PS. It's a burst of energy. It's like 129 plasmatic energy. It's got to go somewhere. You got to go back into the matter section of the teachings. That's when a nitrogen at a certain condition, outer layers of the space created in respect to Earth, some of the nitrogens are stable and some are unstable, isotopes. The ones which are unstable and they can divide, they release to what they call a helium. That helium, if absorbed by another unstable nitrogen, becomes a oxygen, and if that release of helium finds stability, you have carbon. And then in that process of the release of helium, if it's not in the right condition, you have a release of hydrogen. So that's why you have oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen and carbon in the atmosphere of this planet at the upper layers, and it comes down. It's a simple process. I've explained this in the 4th book and in the paper of the amino acid in so many ways. The condition then when you have an extra nitrogen which is really trying to become oxygen or to become a carbon, you release a certain amount of energy due to that single neutron in the center. You can actually create a deuterium from it. If you can release a nitrogen and a neutron and a proton and an electron, you have that deuterium condition in the upper atmosphere. Which then, due to the lack of position of the high energy of the neutron in the gas state in the center of the atomic structure of deuterium, the nitrogen jumps off and it creates molecular hydrogen. That's why we have a H2. If you can capture or separate it, then it becomes atomic hydrogen, links up with the carbon, nitrogen and oxygen, which are the subdivision of the nitrogen, and what they call it in so many ways. Because they had a common denominator, they all came from the same energy levels system, they come together. Common denominator field, the strength which created them, then they become amino acid, the essence of creation on this planet. You have to understand nuclear structure in a plasmatic condition, then you understand how simple it is. That's why in space, we don't need to create the spectrum of the materials. We need to create the condition that the atomic hydrogen thank you very much, that the atomic, nitrogen can be created, that from nitrogen you can create other pieces of the amino acid. Then you can produce, what would you like, beef, fish, wheat or rice. Because they're all connected through this combination of the work. And how they're connected, in what matter connection they're connected, they become what you have. That's why feeding man in the space is very easy. Now we understand the process.
It's half past the hour now, Mr. Keshe. Did you want to bring things to a close, or we could go a little bit longer if you want?
Answer, no problem. Okay. The structure of life is based on production of nitrogen on this planet. Due to the position of this planet in respect to the sun, and due to the gravitational magnetic field of the composite plasmas in the center of the planet. Because the gravitational field, magnetic field, the strength from the sun is constant, it has not changed. Is the planetary system will change, move their position as they get closer. And in a time when gravitational magnetic field of the earth in interaction with the gravitational magnetic field of the plasma of the sun in this solar system become different or different position, then we produce most probably, let's say, gold. From the skies will drop gold. This is what that's why now we see with Venus different composition with different position of rotation. That's why we see life in Mars, or we say we see things in Mars. Because Mars is going through the same condition Earth was to start making rivers, that the oceans can be created, partially from the fields which is coming from the Earth, which is rejecting itself out as it's burning out. It's not all we are absorbing everything. Secondly, because of the position of the Mars, can, if most probably because it was created the same as the Earth, if it's possible, will reach the gravitational magnetic field position somewhere between us and Mars, that starts the creation of life in a physical state. Life exists in every level of creation right across the universe. Any other question? Or we call it a day. We are nearly into 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
That was a nice ending, I think.
We have a lot to learn, especially with the teachings with the university. There's something I have to say. If you are thinking to join the university as a knowledge seeker, what we call in the Executive Master Program 1 and 3 years, this thing we've been told on Thursday will be released. Please understand the position we are in and how the university will be run. We'll try to be, we hope we'll be able to teach in masses than individuals, and at the same time there's a lot of development needs to be done. And at the same time, as you've seen like today, do not come in to become a specialist in one thing. We teach you the right across, you pick what you can to contribute back into humanity. The application are there. I filled my application in this morning to see if it gets accepted. I was rejected immediately. I wasn't good enough to be accepted as a student. So when the real one goes up, by Thursday, fill in the form and expect to be here on Monday, on May the 4th as a student. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Keshe.
Thank you indeed. We have no. Oh, we still have a Spanish teaching today.
Yes, we do. Another hour. That'll be in a half hour from now.
Okay.
For 1 hour.
I hope you're teaching. I hope you can speak fluent Spanish by now.
I can understand it better than I can speak it, that's for sure. But even that is very, very limited for me.
Thank you indeed. Speak later on. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
And so ends the 22nd Health Teaching Workshop of the Keshe Foundation. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
In the middle and form our nose. How you're able to see on the right side of that slide where we have representation of the embryo in different stages. And finally, we get the state of baby with left and right part of our face just close in the middle. Actually, the central line of our face is regarding the positioning of the left and right, because how you see, even in development during the embryology, we separate the embryo to the left and right. And in different weeks of our development, we start to get closer to the central line, left and right part of our body. And finally, the organs where they're situated during the central line, they start to be one. They close in the central line two parts, the left and right. That is the positioning of our nose, of our cavity of our mouth, and during the all the body, through the all the well of the body. Okay, then we go to the next slide. The next slide is a representation for you of our nose. Our nose is placed on the facial part of our head, and how I told you, have different tissue like a structure. We have a bone part, what is represented from our nasal bone, and on the tip and more flexible part of our nose is represent of different kind of cartilage. They have actually different direction and different flexibility. Inside of our nose, if we have a cross section of our head, we see that actually the cavity of nose is like a hole. And also around the nose, we have the cavity of different kind of sinuses. During the development after our delivery, our sinuses starts to open in different ages. Actually, from the beginning, we have opening of the like a hole. The sinus is like a ethmoidal and sphenoidal, and the frontal and maxillar sinuses, they are open after the age of 7 and 8. So the sinuses have so specific function for our head, but will be not they are not the subject of our explanation today. But they're important of the formation of the airflow inside of the nose cavity. So how you see on the cross section, we have the bone part of our nose and the cartilage part of our nose. Above that, we have muscles from the face. We have a derma, and then the epidermis of the skin of our face. Then we go to the next slide. The next slide is a representation of different shape of nose. How other part of our body, the nose, also have different kind of shapes, not only during the central os, but also regarding the nostrils and the middle wall they make between them. In the center of the slide, it is a schematic representation of structure of our nose. And how you see it is similar to the shape of the reactor. It is so funny, but it is actually like that. We have two enters of the airflow inside of our nose, and then the airflow just have specific direction inside of our olfactory bulb. This is the zone where we recognize different kind of smells. On the bottom of the slide is a representation for you the lacrimal glands. This is the glands where you produce your tears, but actually the gland is on the eye area, but all the ducts, they go inside of your nose, and actually one part of the tears, what you're not released through your eyes, they are released through your nose. So mostly our nose have a lot of functions. This is not only a breathing function, this is also how you see the collection and to take it out from our body, the tears. Also, this is regarding the smell, and during our explanation, you see some kind of gland function of our nose. Then we go to the next slide. The next slide is representation of the mucus inside of our nose. Actually, it is regarding of function. We have different kind of organization of the mucus in our nose. Different part of our nose have different kind of function. It is again regarding the channeling of air flow. But mostly the organization of the mucus is like epithelium part. Epithelium is represented from the ciliary hair cells. They have some kind of hair on the above, and this hair recognize different specific particles where they contain inside of the ear. Also above the cilia, we have that we have the mucous blanket. This is the liquid state which actually make the epithelium moist. It is not dry all the time. We have some kind of liquid water state above the epithelium, and behind the epithelium we have different smooth muscles. They are again organized in different directions, and above the muscles we have the derma with different glands inside. Actually, in that part, the glands organize that mucus, the liquid state what we have above the epithelium. Okay, then we go to the next slide. The next slide is a representation of innervation of our nose. Mostly our nose is innervated from nervus facialis, and how you see this is the main nerve from our face. And again we have the cross pathway between the two hemispheres, and this innervation is mostly of the face part of our skull and also inside of the nose. This is not the nerve with who we are able to smell. This is the nerve regarding the other functions of our nose. This is like innervation of the muscles, of epithelium, of the secretion of the glands, but it is not regarding the smell function of our nose. Okay, the next slide. It is a representation of the more specific function of our nose. This is the smell, how we are able to recognize the smell and why actually we need to have that kind of function in our nose. If we look the evolution of different beings in our planet, and how I represented you in the previous workshop, that from the beginning, most of beings, they have a horizontal shape regarding the surface of the planet. There was on the same level like a placement of the star formation. Then during the evolution, the human beings starts to be vertical being of that planet. So actually we change the zone where we are able to take the air actually the air on the planet have different levels, and the containment on the gases and gases in different levels above the surface of the earth, they are so important for organization of the consciousness of different beings. So when we start to walk like a beings on that planet, so we needed the organ which was able to recognize different kind of smells. But actually, what is the smell? This is the combination of different molecules. And regarding the KF technology, this is combination of different gases, single or mixture gases. How we spoke before, the olfactory bulb, this is the direct extension of our emotional part of the brain. This is our thalamus. And how you see, have a specific shape. This is directly placed above the cribriform plate. This is the part of the nose bone, and actually inside of the cribriform plate we have walls and holes. Inside of that holes we have extension from the olfactory bulb. That extension, this is the actually axons of the cells inside the olfactory bulb. They go inside of the mucosa and form different kind of cells. What? They are placed inside the olfactory epithelium. Actually, the mucosa epithelium on that part, which is related with the smell function, is a different organization than the other mucosa inside of the nose. We have again the mucus part, the liquid part, where actually all the molecules of odorants, they are dissolved inside of that liquid state. And how you know, it is more easy to accept different molecules when they are dissolved inside of the liquid state of, how we say, water. But actually that is the mixture. This is not only water molecules, but all the odorants, all the gases, what we have inside of the air. Then that odorant molecules, or how we call regarding the KF technology gas, they start to trigger the, how you see the cell, they have some kind of arms, fingers, and we call dendrites. They start to trigger that receptor, and inside of the olfactory epithelium, nervous cells starts to organize the nervous impulse. Interesting is, so the different cells, they are specific to accept different kind of gases. Actually, we have 100 million different acceptor cells where they are able to accept specific molecules. They are not acceptors for the all odorants molecules. They specify in fields or nose cavity. Actually, when air comes inside of the nose cavity, starts to form three different pathways. This is the superior, middle, and the lower airflow. Different airflows, they have different function inside of the nose cavity. Also regarding Ayurveda, for example, and pranayama, they are useful for increasing different energies inside of our body. So regarding the shape of nose, in traditional medicine, also alternative medicine, we're able to recognize different diseases. For example, so specific is shape of the nose in the patient where they get a state of syphilis, where the nose starts to deform, the bones part of the nose starts to get different specific deformation. Also different kind of diseases like emotional diseases, mind diseases, also they're represented with different kind of shape of the nose. Shape of the nose is also connected with different ethos and the people with different motherhood, different ethnos they represent with during the centuries. This is like statistic. They represent with specific shape of the nose. Even when we see some person, we are able to recognize what kind of genes this person carry just from the shape of the nose. Okay, then we go to the next slide. The next slide is the cross section of the nose cavity, and it is represent the cavity inside. How you see, this is the shape of the butterfly, or this is the so similar shape of our brain. If you remember the previous workshop, I showed you the cross section of the two hemispheres. They are on the same shape. Actually, all over our body, we have a repetitive model of the shapes in different organs, in different cavities. They form mostly several shapes and they repeat all over the body. That shape is represent for you different pathway of the air inside of our nose cavity. In the cross section is visible for you. It is mentioned the superior turbinate in the medical language. This is the superior, middle, and lower concha, and between them is formed the flow of the air inside of our nose cavity. Actually, different flow of the air reach different part of the pharyngeal wall of our pharyngeal cavity. And what is the important? Because if we think and regarding the key of technology, with air we put inside of our nose different kind of gases what the air contains in specific in our region where we are living. So actually with that flow, we channelize directly to trigger the part of the pharyngeal wall and some part of the pharyngeal wall, if you remember. This is the touching point with our uvula, so we get directly in touch with our emotional part, with our thalamus, even just because we have a channeling of air flow. And on the top of the nose cavity, this is the formation of all.
Welcome everybody to the 22nd Health Teaching Workshop of the Keshe Foundation. The topic for this workshop will be the olfactory system, the barcode reader. And today, as usual, we will be speaking with Mr. Keshe of the Keshe Foundation. And first we'll hear from Dr. E.Kostova of the Spaceship Institute. And she will describe the olfactory system for us, the anatomy of the olfactory system, commonly known as the nose, but it includes more than the nose, I suspect. And then we'll have comments from Mr. Keshe after that. So I think we're ready to begin. Dr. Kostova, are you there?
Yeah, hello everybody. It's me, Elia, and nice to be with you and the 22nd Keshe Foundation Health Teaching Workshop. The subject today is olfactory system and the nose. So we go with the first slide. The first slide is a representation of embryology. In the part of embryo where start the formation of nose, this is the part of encephalon, how you see in the middle picture. The nose forms in duration of our development in embryo state during different weeks, because actually the nose have different parts and contain different tissue. Some part of the nose is represented from bones, cartilage, muscles, and also the mucosa, and a huge amount of the nose is represented from the nervous system. And how you see the formation of the nose in the middle picture is in the number 1. This is the beginning of the first central nervous system nerve. And this is the olfactory nerve. That is the part where starts to form the olfactory bulb. Actually, our nose represents the olfactory system, what starts with formation of olfactory bulb from tail encephalon. And the number 2, this is the eyes area, and how you see they start for so close place, the eyes, the ears, and the nose. In the middle of the head of the embryo, if you remember, this is the part of our emotional part of the brain, our thalamus. If you remember from the previous workshop, actually our eyes and the olfactory bulbs, their extension directly from our brain, from our, and especially the olfactory bulb from our limbic system. And the part of the limbic system is our thalamus. During the development in embryo, we get from the pharyngeal arch different part of our nose. And how you see on the pictures where it is looks like embryo, it is mentioned the place where starts different part of the nose. It is like nasal pit, it is medial part of the nose, it is the lateral part of the nose. And during the development, the left and the right side of the embryo, just they close